The afternoon sun beat down on the cracked asphalt of the small auto repair shop, making the air shimmer with heat. Inside the garage, Robert wiped his forehead with an oil-stained rag and looked around at the empty workspace. The silence was deafening. There was a time when this place buzzed with activity, when customers lined up outside waiting for their turn, when the sound of tools and engines filled the air from morning until evening. Those days felt like a lifetime ago. Robert had opened this shop 15 years back with nothing but a toolbox, a dream, and every penny he'd managed to save from working double shifts at other people's garages. He'd chosen this location carefully, right on the edge of downtown Portland where he thought there'd be enough traffic to keep him busy. And for years it worked. He built a reputation as the honest mechanic, the guy who wouldn't try to sell you parts you didn't need or charge you for work he didn't do. People trusted him. They came back. They told their friends. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 2 years ago, his daughter Katie started getting sick. At first they thought it was just the flu, something that would pass with rest and chicken soup. But the fevers kept coming back and she kept getting weaker. After months of tests and appointments with specialists, they finally got the diagnosis. Katie needed surgery, the kind that insurance companies love to find excuses not to fully cover, the kind that comes with bills that make your head spin and your stomach drop. Robert and his wife Linda had faced a choice that no parent should ever have to make. But really, it wasn't a choice at all. Katie was their only child, their whole world. They would have sold everything they owned, lived in a cardboard box, done anything to make sure she got the care she needed. So they did what they had to do. They emptied their savings account. They took out loans. They maxed out credit cards. And Katie got her surgery. Thank God she came through it. The surgery was successful and Katie was recovering well. She was back in school now, laughing with her friends, living the normal life of a 14-year-old girl. Every time Robert looked at her smile, he knew they'd made the right choice. He'd make the same decision again in a heartbeat, but the bills didn't stop coming. Physical therapy, follow-up appointments, medications that cost more per month than some people's car payments. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. The debt piled up like snow in a blizzard and Robert found himself drowning in it. The shop started suffering. He couldn't afford to advertise anymore. He had to let go of his assistant, a good kid named Pete who'd been learning the trade. He started buying cheaper parts to try to keep his prices competitive, but that backfired when a couple of jobs didn't hold up as well as they should have. Word spreads fast in a neighborhood and not always the kind of word you want spreading. Customers started going elsewhere. The bigger chain shops with their fancy waiting rooms and free coffee. The dealerships with their certified technicians. Even some of the other small garages in town, run by guys Robert had known for years, started getting the customers that used to be his. 3 months ago, Robert fell behind on rent for the first time in 15 years. His landlord, Mr. Peterson, was understanding at first. He'd been a customer himself back in the day, had his old pickup truck serviced at Robert's shop for years. He gave Robert some grace, told him not to worry too much, that they'd work something out. But business didn't pick up. If anything, it got worse. 1 month behind became 2 months. Then 3. Last week, Mr. Peterson had stopped by the shop and the conversation wasn't friendly anymore. He needed the money. He had his own bills to pay, his own problems to deal with. He gave Robert 30 days. Either come up with the $15,000 in back rent, or the shop would have to close. The lease would be terminated and everything Robert had built would be gone. $15,000 might as well have been $15 million. Robert had maybe $200 in his bank account. His credit cards were maxed out. His credit score had taken such a beating that banks laughed when he applied for loans. He'd even swallowed his pride and asked family members for help. But everyone had their own struggles. His brother was dealing with his own business problems. Linda's sister had just lost her job. Their parents were retired and living on fixed incomes. Robert had spent the last few nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. How would he tell Linda that he was losing the shop? How would they pay their bills? Katie still had years of follow-up care ahead of her. He was 46 years old. Who would hire him? Would he end up working for minimum wage at some chain shop? Taking orders from managers half his age? That Tuesday afternoon, Robert had seriously considered just packing it in early. There were no appointments scheduled. No one had called. The phone hadn't rung all day except for one collection agency looking for payment. He'd told them the same thing he told all the others. He didn't have it right now, but he'd pay as soon as he could. They didn't seem convinced. He was standing by the bay door looking out at the street, wondering if he should just pull it down and go home, when he heard the sound. It was the unmistakable noise of a car in serious trouble. That awful grinding, knocking sound that tells you something's very wrong under the hood. Then he saw the smoke, thick and white, billowing from beneath the hood of an old Mercedes sedan as it turned into his lot. The car barely made it into the parking area before the engine died completely. More smoke poured out, and for a second, Robert worried the thing might actually catch fire. He grabbed the fire extinguisher he kept by the door, just in case, and hurried over. The driver's door opened, and an elderly Asian woman stepped out, coughing and waving her hand in front of her face to clear the smoke. She was maybe 70 years old, dressed in a nice pantsuit that suggested she'd been somewhere important. Her face was a mask of worry and panic, and Robert could see that her hands were shaking. "Please, can you help me?" she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I don't know what happened. It just started smoking and making terrible noises." Robert popped the hood and smoke billowed out. He waved it away and looked inside. It didn't take long to see the problem. Actually, it was problems, plural. The head gasket had blown, and from what he could see, the radiator was cracked too. This wasn't going to be a quick fix. This was going to take hours of work and parts that cost real money. He stood up and looked at the woman, trying to figure out how to break the bad news. That's when he noticed something else about her expression. It wasn't just worry about the car. There was something more there, something deeper. She looked like she was on the verge of falling apart completely. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I'm not going to lie to you. Your car's got some serious problems. It's going to take a while to fix, and it's not going to be cheap." The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. I have to get to the hospital. My grandson was in an accident. They called me an hour ago. He's in surgery right now, and I need to be there. I need to be with my family." Robert felt his heart sink. He knew that feeling, knew it better than most people. He remembered those terrifying hours when Katie had been in surgery, how every minute felt like an hour, how the only thing in the world that mattered was being there when she woke up. The woman was reaching for her purse now, pulling it open with trembling fingers. "How much do you need? I'll pay whatever it costs. Just please tell me you can fix it quickly." Robert watched as the elderly woman fumbled through her purse, and something about the desperate way she searched through it made his chest tighten. He'd seen that look before in the mirror during those awful months when Katie was sick. It was the look of someone whose world had just been turned upside down, someone running on pure adrenaline and fear. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "take a breath. Tell me about your grandson. What happened?" She looked up at him, tears now streaming freely down her face. "His name is Michael. He's 17. He was driving home from basketball practice when someone ran a red light. They said the impact was on his side of the car." Her voice broke. "They said he's in critical condition. They're operating on him right now, and I should be there. I should be with my son and daughter-in-law. I shouldn't be standing here in a parking lot while my grandson is fighting for his life." Robert felt the words hit him like a punch to the gut. 17, just 3 years older than Katie. He thought about how he'd felt during those endless hours of Katie's surgery, how Linda had held his hand so tight he lost feeling in his fingers, how they'd both tried to be strong for each other even though they were both terrified. The woman had found her wallet now and was pulling out cash, counting it with shaking hands. 120, another 20, some tens, a few ones. She counted it twice, as if hoping the numbers would change, then looked up at him with devastation in her eyes. "I have $43, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I left the house so fast when they called. I didn't think to grab my credit cards. They're sitting in my other purse at home. I just grabbed my keys and ran. I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't thinking at all." She looked at the crumpled bills in her hand, then back at Robert, and he could see she was trying to figure out what to do. Should she call someone to bring her credit cards? Should she try to get to the hospital first and deal with the car later? But even as he watched her thinking through the options, he could tell she knew the truth. It was going to take hours to fix this car properly, no matter what. Robert looked at the Mercedes, at the smoke still wisping from under the hood, then back at the woman. He thought about the $15,000 he owed in rent, the bills stacking up on his kitchen table, the collection agencies calling every day. He thought about how he needed every dollar he could get if he had any hope of saving his shop. Then he thought about Michael, 17 years old, lying on an operating table right now. He thought about this woman's son and daughter-in-law, probably sitting in a hospital waiting room, scared out of their minds, wanting their family around them. He thought about Katie and how much it had meant to have people around them during those dark days. He made his decision. "Ma'am, what's your name?" he asked. "Helen," she said. "Helen Chen." "Okay, Helen, here's what we're going to do. You're going to call a taxi or a rideshare, and you're going to get to that hospital right now. Be with your family. That's where you need to be." "But my car—" "I'm going to fix your car," Robert said firmly. "You don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." Helen shook her head, confused. "I don't understand." "I only have $43. You said this would be expensive." "I'll fix it," Robert repeated. "You go be with your grandson. When the car's ready, I'll call you. You can come pick it up and pay me then. Whenever you can. It doesn't have to be today or tomorrow. Whenever you're able, that's fine." Helen stared at him like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. You'd do that? But you don't even know me. What if I don't come back? What if I don't pay you?" Robert shrugged. "Then I guess I'll have fixed a car for free. But something tells me you're good for it. Besides, some things are more important than money. Your grandson needs you right now. That's what matters." For a moment, Helen just stood there looking at this stranger in grease-stained coveralls who was offering to help her when he had every reason not to. Then she did something that surprised them both. She stepped forward and hugged him, holding on tight like he was a lifeline in a storm. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to thank you enough." "You just said it," Robert told her gently. "Now go. Get to your family." Helen pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and called for a ride. While they waited, she wrote down her phone number on a piece of paper from her purse, making Robert promise to call her with updates about the car and to let her know how much the repair would cost. She also wrote down the name of the hospital where Michael was, though Robert wasn't sure why she did that. When the taxi arrived 10 minutes later, Helen hugged Robert again. "You're a good man," she said. "A really good man. I won't forget this. I promise I'll make this right." Then she was gone, the taxi pulling away and leaving Robert alone with a broken-down Mercedes and a decision he was already starting to question. He looked at the car, then at the empty shop behind him, then pulled out his phone and called his wife. "Hey," Linda answered on the second ring. "You coming home early?" "No, actually, I'm going to be late." "Really late? Might be an all-nighter." "What? Why? I thought you said business was slow." Robert sighed and explained the situation. He told her about Helen, about Michael, about the decision he'd made to fix the car even though he wasn't sure when or even if he'd get paid for it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Rob," Linda finally said, her voice careful, "you know I love you. You know I think you have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. But honey, we're about to lose the shop. We can't afford to be giving away free repairs right now." "I know," Robert said quietly. "I know it doesn't make financial sense. I know it's probably stupid. But Linda, this kid is 17. He's Katie's age. And his grandmother was standing here desperate to get to the hospital and I couldn't look at her and tell her tough luck." Another pause. Then Linda sighed. But it was the kind of sigh that told Robert she understood, even if she was worried. "You're a good man." "Robert Chen," she said, using Helen's last name by accident, which made them both chuckle despite everything. "A too good man sometimes. But that's why I married you. Just be safe, okay? Don't work yourself to death. Come home if it gets too late." "I will," Robert promised. "I love you. Love you too." Robert hung up and looked at the Mercedes again. He pulled it into the bay, turned on all the lights, and got to work. First, he needed to properly diagnose everything that was wrong. The blown head gasket was obvious, but he needed to check the extent of the damage. The radiator was definitely cracked, maybe damaged beyond repair. He'd have to see what else was affected. As he worked, his mind kept wandering to the numbers. A head gasket job on a Mercedes wasn't cheap. With parts and labor, he'd normally charge somewhere around $1,500, maybe more depending on what else needed fixing. The radiator would be another few hundred for the part alone, plus labor. He was looking at a $2,000 job easily. $2,000 he wasn't sure he'd ever see. His business partner, Tommy, stopped by around 7. Tommy didn't work at the shop anymore, not since Robert had to let him go 6 months back, but they'd stayed friends. Tommy had found work at one of the dealerships across town and sometimes dropped by to check on Robert. "Working late?" Tommy said, walking into the bay. Then he saw the Mercedes and raised his eyebrows. "Nice car. Whose is it?" Robert explained the situation. Tommy listened, his expression growing more and more concerned. "Man, are you serious?" Tommy said when Robert finished. "You're fixing this car for free? Right now? When you're about to lose this place?" "Not for free," Robert corrected. "She's going to pay me, just later." "When? When is later? Did you get a credit card number? A deposit? Anything?" Robert shook his head. "Just her phone number." Tommy ran his hand over his face. "Rob, buddy, I love you. You know I do. You gave me my start in this business. But this is crazy. You don't know this woman. You don't know if she's actually going to pay you. And even if she does, you need money now, not later. You've got 30 days to come up with 15 grand and you're wasting time and parts on a maybe." "It's not a maybe," Robert said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced himself. "She'll pay." I could see it in her eyes. "She's good people." "Good people still don't pay sometimes," Tommy said. "Good people have their own problems, their own bills. Her grandson's in the hospital, right? You think she's not going to have massive medical bills? You think she's going to be worried about paying for her car repair when she's got that hanging over her?" Robert didn't answer because he didn't have a good answer. Tommy was right. It was a gamble. And he was gambling with money he didn't have to lose, but he kept working anyway. Tommy hung around for another hour, helping where he could, but eventually he had to leave. Before he went, he put his hand on Robert's shoulder. "I hope you're right about her," he said. "I really do, because if you're wrong, this might be the thing that finally sinks you." After Tommy left, Robert worked alone in the quiet shop. His back ached. His hands were raw. He hadn't eaten since lunch and his stomach was growling, but he kept going. He pulled parts from his inventory, parts he'd been saving for other jobs, parts he might need later. He used the good radiator he'd bought for his own truck, the one he'd been planning to install next weekend. By midnight, he'd made good progress. By 3 in the morning, he was exhausted but determined. By the time the sun started coming up, painting the sky pink and orange, the Mercedes was purring like a kitten, running better than it probably had in years. Robert stood back and looked at his work. Whatever else happened, he'd done a good job. The car was fixed right. Helen would be able to drive it safely, if she came back for it. Robert called Helen's number that Wednesday morning, right after he finished the car. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. He left a message, keeping it simple and friendly. The car was ready whenever she wanted to pick it up, no rush. He hoped everything was okay with her grandson. He tried not to think about the fact that she hadn't answered. Wednesday came and went. No callback. No Helen showing up at the shop. Robert tried her number again Wednesday evening. Straight to voicemail this time, like the phone was turned off. He didn't leave another message. He didn't want to seem pushy, didn't want to bother her while she was dealing with a family crisis. Thursday morning, he tried one more time. The phone rang, but again, no answer. This time when he went to leave a voicemail, an automated voice told him the mailbox was full. He hung up and stared at the Mercedes sitting in his lot like a question mark. Tommy stopped by Thursday afternoon and saw the car still there. "She hasn't picked it up yet?" he asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. "She's dealing with her grandson," Robert said defensively. "The kid was in critical condition. She's probably at the hospital around the clock. I'm sure she'll call when she can." Tommy didn't say anything, but the look on his face said plenty. Thursday turned into Friday. Robert tried to stay busy, tried to drum up other business, but his heart wasn't in it. He kept glancing at the Mercedes, kept checking his phone, waiting for a call that didn't come. The phone number Helen had given him still went straight to voicemail. He started wondering if maybe he'd written it down wrong, if maybe he'd transposed some numbers in the chaos of that moment. Or maybe Tommy was right. Maybe Helen wasn't going to come back. Friday afternoon, Mr. Peterson, the landlord, stopped by. He didn't look happy. "Robert," he said, "we need to talk about the rent situation." Robert's stomach dropped. "I still have a couple weeks, right? You said 30 days. I said that 10 days ago," Mr. Peterson replied. which means you've got 20 days left. I need to know if you're going to be able to make it happen. If not, I need to start looking for another tenant. I can't afford to keep losing money on this property. Robert wanted to tell him yes, absolutely, he'd have the money. But he couldn't lie. I'm working on it, he said instead. I'm doing everything I can. Mr. Peterson looked around the empty shop at the Mercedes sitting in the bay. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're fixing cars for free instead of trying to save your business. So he'd heard about Helen. News traveled fast in this neighborhood. That was a special situation, Robert said. Every situation is special to somebody, Mr. Peterson shot back. But special doesn't pay the rent. 20 days, Robert. That's all I can give you. After he left, Robert sat on his rolling stool and put his head in his hands. 20 days. $15,000. And $2,000 of it tied up in a car that might never get picked up. Parts he could have used for paying customers or sold for cash. What had he been thinking? That night, Linda found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a pile of bills he'd been trying to organize. Katie had already gone to bed, still no word? Linda asked gently. Robert shook his head. Phone's disconnected or something. Goes straight to voicemail and the mailbox is full. Linda sat down next to him and took his hand. Maybe she's still at the hospital. Maybe things with her grandson got worse. Maybe she's just overwhelmed. Or maybe she's not planning to come back, Robert said. Maybe she gave me a fake number. Maybe she saw an opportunity to get her car fixed for free and took it. You don't believe that, Linda said firmly. I saw your face when you came home that night. You told me about her, about how scared she was. That wasn't an act. That was real. Real scared doesn't mean she's going to pay me, Robert said bitterly. Tommy was right. I was stupid. I gambled with money we don't have and I lost. Linda was quiet for a moment. Then she squeezed his hand. You did what you thought was right. You helped someone who needed help. That's not stupid. That's who you are. Who I am is about to be unemployed, Robert muttered. The weekend was torture. Robert couldn't stop thinking about the Mercedes, couldn't stop checking his phone, couldn't stop replaying that Tuesday afternoon in his head. Had he misread the situation? Had Helen seemed trustworthy because he wanted her to be, because he needed to believe that good deeds got rewarded? Katie noticed he was upset. On Saturday afternoon, she found him in the garage at home, organizing tools he didn't need to organize, just trying to keep his hands busy. Dad, are you okay? She asked. Robert looked at his daughter, at her healthy face and bright eyes, and thought about how different things might have been if the surgery hadn't worked. He thought about Helen's grandson, Michael, 17 years old, fighting for his life. I'm fine, sweetie, he said. Just got a lot on my mind. Is it about the shop? Robert was surprised. What do you know about the shop? I heard you and Mom talking, Katie admitted. I know things are hard right now. I know it's because of my surgery. Hey, Robert said, pulling her into a hug. Don't you ever think that? Your surgery was the most important thing in the world. Nothing else matters compared to you being healthy. But you might lose the shop, Katie said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Maybe, Robert admitted, but we'll figure something out. We always do. He wished he felt as confident as he sounded. Sunday afternoon, Robert made a decision. He called a towing company and had them take the Mercedes from his shop to a secure lot where they stored abandoned vehicles. He couldn't keep staring at it. It was driving him crazy, and he needed the bay space in case an actual paying customer showed up. The tow truck driver raised his eyebrows when Robert explained the situation. You fixed somebody's car and they just didn't come back for it? Man, that's cold, yeah, Robert said. It is. After the Mercedes was gone, the shop felt even emptier than before. Robert tried to work on his own truck, the one that needed the radiator he'd used for Helen's car, but he couldn't focus. He kept making mistakes, dropping tools, losing his place in the job. Finally, he gave up. He locked up the shop and went home early, something he almost never did on a Sunday. Monday morning started with a call from his bank. His business account was overdrawn. He'd forgotten about an automatic payment for his insurance, and there hadn't been enough to cover it. The overdraft fee put him even further in the hole. Then a customer called to cancel an appointment he'd scheduled for Tuesday. No explanation, just didn't need the work done anymore. Robert suspected he'd heard the rumors about the shop maybe closing and didn't want to risk having his car stuck there. By Monday afternoon, Robert was seriously considering just throwing in the towel. Maybe it was time to accept reality. Maybe trying to save the shop was just delaying the inevitable. He could sell his tools, pay off what he could, declare bankruptcy for the rest. He could get a job somewhere else. It would be humiliating, and he'd hate working for someone else after being his own boss for so long, but at least the stress would be over. He was sitting in his office, looking at the eviction notice for what felt like the 100th time, when Tommy called. "Hey man," Tommy said. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better," Robert admitted. "The Mercedes lady ever show up?" "Nope, had it towed away yesterday. I can't look at it anymore." Tommy was quiet for a second. "Listen, I've been thinking. I've got some money saved up. Not a lot, but maybe a few thousand. If you need it." "No," Robert said immediately. "Absolutely not. I'm not taking your money, Tommy. You've got your own life, your own bills." "You gave me my start," Tommy said. "You trained me, believed in me when nobody else would." "If I can help, I appreciate it," Robert cut him off. "I really do, but I'm not dragging you down with me. I'll figure something out." But he had no idea what that something would be. Tuesday morning, Robert almost didn't open the shop. What was the point? He had no appointments, no customers coming. He could sit at home and feel sorry for himself just as easily as he could sit in an empty garage and feel sorry for himself. But old habits die hard. By 9 o'clock, he was at the shop, the bay door open, ready for business that probably wouldn't come. Around 10, a car pulled into the lot. For one crazy second, Robert thought maybe it was Helen, finally coming back, but it was just someone asking for directions to the interstate. By noon, Robert had decided. He'd finish out the week, then start the process of closing down. He'd call Mr. Peterson, tell him he was done. He'd start selling off equipment, tools, whatever he could. It was over. He was eating a sad sandwich from the convenience store next door, sitting on his stool and staring at nothing, when he heard vehicles pulling into the lot. Multiple vehicles by the sound of it. Probably someone using his lot to turn around. But then the engines cut off. Doors opened and closed. Robert walked to the bay door and looked out. 3 black SUVs were parked in his lot. They were the kind of vehicles that cost more than Robert made in a year, maybe 2 years. The kind with tinted windows and chrome that gleamed in the sunlight. Robert's first thought was that these were city officials, maybe coming to shut him down early. His second thought was that maybe he'd done something wrong with the Mercedes. Maybe something had broken, and Helen's family was here to sue him. His third thought was drowned out by what happened next. The rear door of the middle SUV opened, and Helen stepped out. Robert's heart started pounding. She was here. She'd come back. He wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or nervous. Behind her, another man got out of the car, tall and distinguished-looking, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Robert's truck. Other people emerged from the other vehicles, all dressed professionally, all looking serious. This didn't feel like someone coming to pick up their car and pay a repair bill. This felt like something else entirely. Robert just wasn't sure what. Helen saw him and smiled, that same warm smile from a week ago, and she started walking toward him. The man in the expensive suit followed her, along with 2 others who looked like they might be assistants or lawyers or something. Robert's mouth went dry. Whatever was about to happen, he had a feeling his life was about to change. He just wasn't sure if it would be for better or worse. Robert wiped his hands on his coveralls, suddenly very aware of how he must look. He hadn't shaved in a couple days, his clothes were stained with oil and grease, and he probably smelled like a combination of motor oil and stress sweat. Here was Helen, looking put together and composed, walking toward him with what appeared to be an entourage of wealthy, professional people. "Robert," Helen said warmly as she reached him. Her eyes were clear and bright, no longer filled with the panic and tears from a week ago. "I'm so sorry it took me this long to come back. Things have been absolutely crazy. How's your grandson?" Robert asked, because that seemed like the most important question. "Michael, right?" Helen's face broke into a relieved smile. "He's going to be okay. He made it through the surgery, and the doctors say he's going to make a full recovery. It's a miracle, really. There were some scary moments, but he's strong. He's going to be fine." Robert felt a weight lift off his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. "That's great news. I'm really happy to hear that." "Thank you," Helen said. "And thank you for what you did. For fixing my car so I could get to the hospital. For not making me worry about anything except being with my family. You have no idea what that meant to me. It's no problem, Robert said, though they both knew that wasn't exactly true. I'm just glad I could help. Listen, about the car, we'll get to that, Helen interrupted gently. But first I want to introduce you to my son. She turned to the man in the expensive suit. Robert, this is James Chen. James, this is the man I told you about. James stepped forward and extended his hand. His handshake was firm and confident, the kind of handshake that came from years of business meetings and important deals. Robert, it's a pleasure to meet you. My mother has told me a lot about what you did for her. I just fixed her car, Robert said, confused about why this required such a formal introduction. You did more than that, James said, but let me back up a little. I should explain who we are and why we're here. Robert nodded, feeling more confused by the second. My family owns Chen Industries. James continued. We're one of the largest automotive parts manufacturers in the Pacific Northwest. We supply parts to dealerships, repair shops, and retailers throughout Oregon, Washington, and parts of California. We have manufacturing facilities, warehouses, a distribution network. We employ about 3,000 people across our various operations. Robert felt his eyebrows go up. He'd heard of Chen Industries. Every mechanic in the region had. They made quality parts, the kind you could trust. He'd used their products himself over the years. When my mother told me what happened, James continued, when she told me about your kindness and generosity, I was intrigued. But I'm a businessman, Robert. I don't make decisions based on emotions alone. So I did what I always do. I investigated. Robert's confusion was turning into something else now, a kind of nervousness. Investigated? I wanted to know who you were, James said. I had my people look into your business, your background, your reputation. I hope you don't mind. Robert didn't know if he minded or not. He was too surprised to form an opinion. What did you find? We found a mechanic who's been in business for 15 years, James said. A mechanic with an outstanding reputation for honest work and fair prices. A man who customers trust, who they recommend to their friends and family. We found reviews online praising your integrity, your skill, your character. Robert felt his face getting warm. He wasn't used to being praised like this, especially not by someone like James Chen. We also found, James continued, his voice becoming more serious, that you're in financial trouble, that you're behind on your rent, that you're facing eviction, that your business is on the verge of closing. We found out about your daughter's medical issues, about the bills you've been struggling to pay. Robert's embarrassment turned to something closer to shame. Having a stranger know all the intimate details of his failures felt worse than anything. Look, I don't need charity, he said stiffly. I appreciate your mother's gratitude, but I don't need a handout. I just need to know what I owe for the car so we can settle up and... You don't owe us anything. Helen interjected. Robert, you helped me when I needed it most. You trusted me. A complete stranger when you had every reason not to. You gave me peace of mind during the worst day of my life. There's no amount of money that can repay that. The car repairs cost about $2,000 in parts and labor, Robert said firmly. I did the work, and I expect to be paid for it. That's how business works. He's proud, James said to his mother, a small smile on his face. I like that. He turned back to Robert. Okay, let's talk business then. But not about the car repairs. About something bigger. One of the assistants stepped forward with a briefcase. James took it and set it on Robert's workbench, opening it to pull out a folder of documents. My company is successful, James said. Very successful. But we've been facing a problem lately, and it's not one that money alone can solve. We've been trying to figure out how to give back to the community in a meaningful way. We've made donations to charities, sponsored programs, done all the usual corporate philanthropy, but it never feels quite right. It never feels like we're making a real difference. Robert had no idea where this was going. Then my mother told me your story, James continued, and I realized something. We don't need another charity program. We don't need another donation to another organization. What we need is to invest in people like you, people with integrity, people who do the right thing even when it costs them, people who still believe in helping their neighbors. James pulled out some papers from the folder. Robert, I'd like to make you an offer. I'd like to propose a partnership between your shop and Chen Industries. A partnership? Robert repeated. I don't understand. Here's what I'm proposing, James said. Chen Industries will cover all your outstanding debts. The $15,000 in back rent, the medical bills, the credit cards, all of it. We'll pay to modernize your equipment, Upgrade your facility, whatever you need to bring this shop up to current standards. Robert felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Why would you do that?
In exchange, James continued, your shop will become an authorized Chen Industry Service Center.
We'll provide you with a steady stream of warranty work, fleet maintenance contracts, referrals from our network. We'll guarantee you enough business to keep you profitable. But there's one other condition. Robert waited, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. We want you to train young people, James said. Kids from underprivileged backgrounds, kids who need a skill and a chance. We want this shop to become a place where someone like my mother or me, years ago when we first came to this country, could learn a trade and build a future. We want you to pass on what you know, to give others the opportunity you had. Robert's mind was reeling. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, James said. Take some time. Look over the proposal. Talk to your wife, your lawyer if you have one. But Robert, I want you to understand something. This isn't charity. This is business. I'm not offering this to you because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because my mother saw something in you that I've spent years looking for in business partners. She saw character. She saw integrity. Those are rare qualities and they're valuable. Helen stepped closer and put her hand on Robert's arm. When you helped me that day, you didn't know who I was. You didn't know my family had money or connections. You just saw someone who needed help and you helped. That's who you are. That's why we want to work with you. Robert looked down at the papers James was holding out to him. His hands were shaking as he took them. This was too much. It was too good to be true. There's no catch? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. No catch, James confirmed. Well, except that you'll have to deal with my legal team and they can be pretty thorough. And you'll have paperwork to file, regulations to follow, all the boring business stuff. But the essence of the deal is exactly what I described. One of the other people from the entourage stepped forward, a woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Mr. Robert, my name is Patricia Wong. I'm the Director of Community Programs for Chen Industries. Part of this partnership would involve me working with you to develop a training curriculum for the apprenticeship program. We'd want your input on everything. It's your shop, your expertise. We're just providing the resources. Robert looked at all these people, all looking at him with something that seemed like genuine respect, genuine interest. He thought about the last week, the despair he'd felt, the certainty that he was going to lose everything. He thought about Tommy's words, about how he'd been stupid to help Helen, about how good people don't always pay. But they had paid. They'd paid in a way Robert never could have imagined. I need to understand, Robert said slowly. Why me? There are hundreds of mechanics in this city, thousands in the region. Why specifically me? James smiled. That's exactly the question a smart businessman would ask, which confirms I'm making the right choice. Here's the truth, Robert. We could partner with anyone. We could buy a shop, start from scratch, hire whoever we want. But we're not looking for just any mechanic. We're looking for someone who embodies the values we want to promote. When my mother told me you fixed her car without knowing if you'd ever get paid, during one of the worst weeks of your life, I knew. That's the person we want to work with. That's the story we want to be part of. Robert felt tears stinging his eyes and blinked them back quickly. He wasn't going to cry in front of these people. Wasn't going to break down even though every emotion he'd been holding in for months was trying to burst out. Can I really think about this? He asked. Can I really take time to decide? Of course, Helen said warmly. This is a big decision. Talk to your family. Read through everything carefully. We'll be here when you're ready. James handed Robert a business card. Call me anytime, day or night. I mean that. And Robert? The offer to settle your debt stands regardless of whether you accept the partnership. My mother's car got fixed and you deserve to be paid. If you decide you don't want to partner with us, that's fine. We'll still pay what you're owed, plus enough to cover your immediate financial crisis. You helped my mother. The least we can do is make sure you don't lose your shop because of it. After they left, Robert stood alone in his shop, holding the folder of documents, James's business card, and a check for $5,000 that Helen had insisted he take as immediate payment for the car repairs and his immediate expenses. The check alone was more than twice what the repairs had cost. He called Linda, and his voice shook as he tried to explain what had just happened. She didn't believe him at first. Neither did he, really. It all felt like a dream. like something that would evaporate if he looked away for too long. Robert spent that entire evening at the kitchen table with Linda, going through every page of the proposal James had left with him. The document was professional, detailed, and more generous than he could have imagined. Chen Industries would pay off all his debts, not as a loan but as an investment in the partnership. They'd provide $50,000 for equipment upgrades and facility improvements. The shop would remain in Robert's name under his control, but would operate as an authorized Chen service center with guaranteed contracts worth at least $200,000 per year. "This can't be real," Linda kept saying, even as she read the numbers over and over. "People don't just do this. This doesn't happen in real life." But it was real. The check for $5,000 was sitting on the table, very real and very cashable. James's business card was real. The proposal, with all its legal language and official letterhead, was real. Katie came downstairs around 9 and found them still at the table, papers spread everywhere. "What's going on?" she asked. "You guys look weird." Robert looked at his daughter and felt something crack open in his chest. For months he'd been carrying the weight of feeling like he'd failed her. Failed Linda, failed everyone who depended on him, and now somehow impossibly there was a way out. Not just a way out, but a way forward. "Come here, kiddo," he said, and when Katie sat down he told her everything. About Helen and the broken-down Mercedes, about the decision to fix it for free, about the week of silence and doubt, and finally about today, about the offer that seemed too good to be true. Katie listened with wide eyes. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Dad, you're always telling me to do the right thing even when it's hard. You did that. This is what happened because you did the right thing." Robert pulled her into a hug, his eyes burning with tears he'd been holding back all day. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from you," Katie said simply. That night, after Katie went to bed, Robert and Linda talked until almost midnight. They went through every possible angle, every concern, every what if. What if it didn't work out? What if Chen Industries changed their mind? What if the partnership fell apart? But eventually Linda put her hand over his and said, "Robert, we were about to lose everything anyway. At worst, this puts us back where we were. At best, it changes our entire lives. There's no real risk here, not anymore. The only question is whether you're ready to accept help." That was the hard part, Robert realized. Accepting help. Admitting that he couldn't do it all alone. That he needed this lifeline that had been thrown to him. His pride wanted to say no. Wanted to insist he could figure it out himself. But his common sense and his love for his family knew better. He called James the next morning. "I accept," Robert said simply. "I'd be honored to partner with Chen Industries." The relief and excitement in James's voice was genuine. "That's wonderful news, Robert. Truly wonderful. I'll have our legal team draw up the final contracts. This is going to be great, I promise you." Things moved quickly after that. Within a week, lawyers were involved, contracts were signed, and money started flowing. Robert called Mr. Peterson and paid the entire $15,000 in back rent in one check. The look on his landlord's face was worth every anxious moment of the past few months. "I don't know what happened," Mr. Peterson said, staring at the check. "But I'm glad you figured it out. You're a good man, Robert. You deserve some good luck." The medical bills got paid. The credit cards got paid. For the first time in 2 years, Robert wasn't drowning in debt. He could breathe. He could sleep at night without lying awake worrying about money. But the real changes were just beginning. Chen Industries sent a team to assess the shop and make recommendations for upgrades. New equipment started arriving. A state-of-the-art diagnostic computer, a proper alignment rack, tools Robert had only dreamed of owning. The building got a fresh coat of paint, new signage, updated lighting. Patricia Wong, the community programs director, worked with Robert to develop the apprenticeship program, helping him figure out how to structure training, what skills to teach, how to find and select candidates. "We want kids who really need this," Patricia explained. "Kids from tough backgrounds who are looking for a path forward. Kids who might not have the money for technical school or college. Kids who just need someone to believe in them and give them a chance." Robert knew exactly the kind of kids she meant. He'd been one of those kids himself a long time ago. The first apprentice they hired was a 19-year-old named Carlos. He'd dropped out of high school to help support his family, worked a series of dead-end jobs, and was trying to figure out what to do with his life. He was skeptical at first, clearly waiting for the catch for the part where it turned out to be too good to be true. "There's no catch," Robert told him on his first day. "You work hard, you learn, you show up on time, and we'll teach you everything you need to know. You'll get paid while you learn. After a year, if you stick with it, you'll have a real skill. You'll be able to get a job anywhere, or who knows, maybe even start your own shop someday." Carlos proved to be a natural. He soaked up knowledge like a sponge, asked good questions, wasn't afraid to admit when he didn't know something. Within a month, he was handling basic repairs on his own. Within 3 months, he was talking about maybe going to technical school part-time to get certified. The second apprentice was a young woman named Destiny, 22 years old, who'd been working at a fast food restaurant and hating every minute of it. She'd always been good with her hands, always liked figuring out how things worked, but nobody had ever suggested she could be a mechanic. Why would they? She was a woman, and this was a man's field, or so everyone kept telling her. "Anyone can learn this," Robert told her. "Male, female doesn't matter. All that matters is whether you're willing to work hard and pay attention. The cars don't care who's fixing them, as long as the job gets done right." Destiny turned out to be one of the best apprentices Robert had ever trained. She was meticulous, detail-oriented, and had an instinct for diagnosis that couldn't be taught. The apprenticeship program became the heart of the shop. Robert found that teaching gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just fixing cars anymore. He was changing lives, giving people opportunities, passing on knowledge. It felt important in a way his work hadn't felt important in a long time. The business side of things flourished too. The Chen Industries contracts provided steady, reliable income. Fleet maintenance for their delivery vehicles, warranty work for dealers who sold Chen parts, referrals from their network of partners. Robert hired Tommy back, this time as a full-time senior mechanic and assistant trainer. The shop that had been dying 6 months ago was now thriving, growing, becoming something bigger than Robert had ever imagined. Helen visited regularly. She'd become friends with Linda and Katie, often stopping by for coffee and conversation. She loved meeting the apprentices, hearing their stories, seeing how the program was changing their lives. Her grandson, Michael, fully recovered from his accident, came by one day to thank Robert personally. "My grandmother talks about you all the time," Michael said. He was a tall, athletic kid with an easy smile. "She says you restored her faith in humanity." "I just fixed her car," Robert said, though he was smiling. "No," Michael said seriously. "You did more than that. You helped her when you didn't have to, when it cost you something to help. That matters. It really matters." 6 months after the partnership began, Chen Industries wanted to do a press release and some publicity about the apprenticeship program. James thought it would be good for the company's image, good for recruiting more shops to partner with, good for inspiring other businesses to create similar programs.